Hey, it is your buddy. It is Peace and Harmony with you here today. Much love going out to all the beautiful, empowered harmonizers. We are zooming in and focusing in on a really important topic that I really want to start out as a series today. Basically, just kind of focusing in on some key components in relationships as they stand almost like legs on a table or columns on a building, basically sustaining the foundation of a relationship. Or what do aspects do these roles play in your life and in your relationships, and how do things either flow and get along harmoniously and to your liking and your happiness. Basically, you're happy and you don't have to say you know it. Basically, you know you're happy, you're in a good place, you're in the right place, you're in an environment, or you're in an environment that's something that is not healthy, that is not thriving, that is stressed out or parched, basically just a desert, just sort of dried up and deadened. And infertile. So when we and so I want to begin sort of on a series here, focusing in on specific components in a relationship and like within yourself, so that things go really deep and that you have a really clear sort of glossary, if you will, when we talk about relationship fails or relationship failure setups. Basically, there might have been some things where you were growing and you didn't know, you made a mistake, or you had a misperception of what was required, or the authentic you in a relationship, and you thought that in your mind, the relationship should be a go, but you were sort of blacked out to other messages. Like what are some of the gears and the facets going on within and without, and and what can be disruptive versus what can be functional, fluid and flowing and non-disturbed, basically harmonious. Not a thing wrong with it. It's okay just the way that it is, even if it's imperfect or something is off a little bit. It's not a game changer. So it brings me to kind of the first topic in our series here, which is like competition. When things get competitive in a relationship, that can be like a relationship failure or a setup for failure. When things get too heated, things get too debated, things get too tug of war, things start escalating, or things start sort of popping at the seams, and there's a certain power that is derived from the negativity, some sort of covert power that someone is then wielding, meaning using this, and it serves as a motion or lever, or basically propagator, something that puts attention or competition in a relationship. That is going to be tough. Now, a little bit of competition is good, meaning whatever areas, you might say, oh, you're, it might start out as kind of funny, like you're the good looking one in the relationship, or you're the one with the brains, or you're the ones with the job, or you're the one with the whatever, and it can be sort of clear cut and, but usually, birds of a feather flock together, meaning that there could be a complement in just sort of the strength of certain people's personalities, or their desire for playfulness, or their desire for seriousness. Competition is really, when it becomes there's an opposition, there's sort of an enemy, or you're not utilizing or tapping into your strengths. In other words, just your own strengths, where you're coming from, if you can imagine that, meaning where your source is, where you're coming from is not acknowledged and validated, meaning how much you kind of put your confidence in your own achievement and your own sort of what you might consider your best self or just yourself out there. And, your best self may mean without any description, without any tension, without any judgment, without a lot of descriptions, or it might be your best might be when you're really sort of active, or organizing, or you're seeing something that gives you a result. Only you know you best. But in a relationship with a narcissist or a psychopath, it's very difficult to do you and do you well. Meaning that there's a competition, there's going to be an opposition, or just sort of an inner setup for failure, incompletion, never completed, an enigma. So, but it's even more than not completed. It's sort of left open with a hook, meaning like, after this, well, you better, you're changed. You're left with a puzzle. It's puzzling. There's something you have to figure out. There's something that you thought that there was this cause and effect factor going on and intermingling with this person, or you thought that there was a foundation of trust. And when we talk sort of about our series here, and we talk like about foundation, we're talking about really something pretty important. And the narcissist or the psychopath, they're not about the foundation. They're about everything else. They're about the window casing. They're about the tuck pointing. They're about the brand. They're about how they look as compared to someone else. There's always, with the problem, with a narcissist, is there is a true competition. Almost, like a boxing, almost that combative, argumentative, as if they're getting something out of it. There's some sort of interjection that is meant to sort of pin you down emotionally, pin you down from expressing yourself, meaning you can't really just be yourself. You have to they have to be the win. There is a competition. So when we talk really about the foundation, we're talking really about the bottom line. And can you really express and allow a foundation to be available in a relationship? Not a lot of people have been able to feel or know or define or experience what a foundation is in a relationship, let alone sometimes even within themselves, because that has been taken out, that hasn't been sort of put in, the pieces haven't been put in yet because they're of a competition. There's a setup for failure, meaning that there's always going to be one who has to be looked at in a sort of dominance or domineering way, even though they might be a natural born leader, but then it remains on simultaneously weakening you. In other words, there is a kink within a narcissist to sort of get you at the goat, get you in the jugular, when you're in your finest moments. They want to, give you the cut down. They want to, something simple that you're doing like a walk might not be productive, or, something else, there's going to be a judgment set up, and that really will devour and destroy the foundation, if there ever was one in a relationship, is that sort of competitive edge where it's not just them in the relationship. There's always a comparison, and if that's against you with some component, meaning like I'm the one with the money, or I'm the one with the charm, or I'm the one with the dough, or who pays the bills, or who there's then going to be the sort of dumbing down of other people. Meaning that when the foundation starts to crack, meaning like a stable relationship, good, something you can rely on, it will be there. It's not changeable with the elements, it'll be there. It's not going to look a lot different. It's not going to be, trying to manipulate you with being down, or manipulate you with tones. You see, these are, then you start getting into manipulation that is lack of trust. I mean, you can literally start looking at the very fine tuning of, of where it really shreds apart at the foundation. But as you know, that can go last, because sometimes people can override their own inner nervous system. They can eat when they're not hungry. They can drink when they're not thirsty. They can stay awake when they're tired. They can override. There is an emotional component that tends to sometimes become, a feeding, that sort of feeding energy towards more the greed and the lust and sort of the excitement. That's not all bad, but it's bad when it takes a destructive toll. And you have to know that either, it is where it is, and you don't have to fall to temptation that inevitably will be the draw. There isn't, there's a competition, meaning, a way that they're always going to be able to find a flaw. It's not so much that they're keeping themselves as better, but sometimes they're going to sort of infuriate others as part of their cycle. It's a cycle of abuse, and it's basically where people end up feeling used, not loved, which is really objectifying of a human being, which is not seeing you for what you are, so you can feel that you're invisible, and people will then try to, so they can be seen. So, they're willing to adapt and listen and sacrifice. And all these are noble emotional states of which to live by. That is discipline. That's self-governing. I mean, these are things that if you are well disciplined, that's going to serve you well. But the narcissist and the psychopath, well disciplined, will not be their middle name, okay? You, though, not being like that, not to any less than, but which they would hope for you to believe, the smoke and mirrors with, which, you can say, I don't believe the smoke and mirrors. You can state that out loud. You can acknowledge it to yourself, and sometimes it's seeing that part of yourself that people are most afraid to let their guard down to themselves, because they've been trying so hard to be perceived as good enough or loved enough by the eyes of another, which you're basically playing like these emotional gymnastics, that you can't do. And why are you driven within you to feel that you need to do this? Why is part of your foundation, and maybe you'll get the answer why, and then you'll have these aha moments and you'll go, why me? Or don't say why me. No, it's more like I'm figuring out, I'm looking deeper into the gem and mystery that life is the way, you can really look at it. Because sometimes, personal development, personal growth takes on a very, sort of very personal, unique, sort of intuitive path that you don't always know how it's going to be, but that you're called to do something, even though it might seem very, close to a value, and you're afraid to embrace it and see it because that hadn't been fully developed and appreciated, nurtured and viewed, because you need the witnessing of another, of your authentic self. Was it Britney Spears, who made that a great thing? I don't know. Who made it a great thing? I don't know, but it is an important thing to, be able to be there, and basically your bottom line self, and be accepted and not be rejected for being human. Basically, a narcissist and a psychopath, I think they kind of feel themselves to be sort of better than the rest, meaning that they feel, and maybe, they are, and that's all well and good, but it doesn't mean that they have to have this competition in relationships where they have to sort of show up on the other person, and then there feels sort of a gulf, or that you have to be according for their likes and desires. In other words, they're trying to put a smile on your face versus you smiling from within, meaning you're looking for their acknowledgement and validation, which you shouldn't even have a need of that in the first place. So you can grow out of that. See, the narcissists, they don't ever grow out of that need for that sort of recognition. Just throwing out things there that people should be impressed by, and then you are quote unquote expected to do the same. Well, what if that's not your shnick grin? Maybe you're not into talking about that. Maybe you're not into all the gadgets and the AI, but even though it's a threat, you want to learn about it. Maybe you're interested in ancient history, or actually like earthing and like experiencing some things, being out in nature, not like being with a phone in nature, but being out in nature, or being in a book, or in a walk, or a movie, or cooking together, or learning, to meet new people and have new relationships that are based on authenticity and sort of a transparency that other relationships basically didn't allow before. It's basically, that ain't allowed in here. Throw it out before you enter. No bottles entered on this airplane. You have to get rid of that like authenticity before you even step in, and you better put it up and shut up. And some people are better at doing it than others. So some people, they don't want to be that way. They're afraid of shutting out some of their sentient self. They don't want to live numb and arrogant, or feeling haughty, or better than, or superior. That's just not cool now. It's just not cool. Like stilettos, high heels aren't cool. The big Timberland boots on guys, aren't cool anymore. I mean, they want it scaled down, the softer side, or whatever. You can still have it, but what I'm saying is, you don't have to puff up yourself to be able to sustain a relationship. You shouldn't have to go back and forth and tit for tat, and sort of like looking to see if your kind of your credibility itself is down, as if they're trying to manipulate the coins in some sort of emotional kitty jar that they started, and you didn't even know you were contributing to some sort of emotional kitty jar. But then here comes the fight, and it's kind of like, when you discover that someone in the relationship is not sort of stable, or is a little bit more malleable, has a little bit of feist, has is competitive, and then other, because sometimes, or I feel oftentimes, people who are narcissist or psychopathic, they truly they have a need for like risky behavior and sort of all this time stimulation, and to sort of be in with that sort of zone, and that's why they can have multiple partners, multiple lives, just do more risky things, indulge in a lot of spending, a lot of basically, I don't want to say opulence, but just sort of flagrant, show of money. I mean, just ostentatious, just sort of braggartly, versus, it's just like, yeah, we get it, or it's just sort of like I was with a friend, and a big, huge truck drove by, and, huge, like Ford F-150, ultra large, or whatever with the hugest motor and the biggest wide wheels, and just, it was really revved up and like above, everybody else in the traffic. And then he made a comment like, oh yeah, that's good enough, guy, or whatever. And I didn't even pick it out, but this guy picked it out. He kind of, because guy, it can then manifest in like their cars, their homes, their wardrobe. Um, and or it just takes precedence over the relationship. Their competitiveness, their need for something gets in the way. It's like the wall of China. It's not coming down. It's been there for centuries, man. You might as well leave it up. It's part of the backbone. It's part of the skeleton. It's part of who they are. This is their move. This is their thing, is the wall. Like, their move, the fridge, whatever their move is, whatever it is you want to call it, you should call it something. The cocoon, the greedy miser, the gold digger, the insatiable monster. I mean, a lot of people say evil, because it compromises so much humanity. Because a lot of us, if you don't, I mean, a lot of us have come a long way just being alive. I mean, forget about what sort of job title. This is 2022, and you know what? To tell you the truth, things are looking a little grim in like the global landscape, meaning like there's a lot of, which we're not going there, but you know what? There comes a time when it's like after a pandemic, after they shut down all the stores and the food and everything, didn't anybody learn anything? Didn't anybody learn to be a little bit kinder and a little bit more appreciative of the essential and the essential worker? Didn't essential have a new meaning to anybody? Didn't anybody become changed after this? It's just like these narcissists, they're still trying to win the game. They're still right back, if not harder, before the get-go. And now, I mean, and we see a proliferation of other negative acts and deeds, which oftentimes I feel tend to feed off one another in the media. This ain't cool, you guys. This ain't cool. I mean, it's just kind of like, I'm not sitting here prophesizing, but I'm just trying to say that, there's certain we've got to really get into a series and like really understand some grit, and like we have to understand the grit and dirt. We have to understand the nooks and crannies. We have to do the breakdown. We have to just like talk about something until it's really broken down so that you can like swallow it. Maybe you haven't been mystified, but what's mystifying, I think, for a lot of people is that they try for so long to win the attention, love, and unfailing, commitment of this person, and it ain't that kind of thing. It ain't that kind of car. That car don't do that. That car don't got no headlights, is what I'm trying to say. Is that car, it might seem like it's going places, and that's its like gravest fear, is that it's not going to amount to something, and that to just be, is very threatening to them. And there's a competition, that then can be set up, and it's no fun to enter a boxing match in the workplace or in the homestead. Some people, if you think that that's a great way to be, then I don't know, more power to you. But, it is very difficult because it sets a negative tone and a negative foundation, which is one of distrust. And it breeds, basically a message that you're untrustworthy. Like, there's a lot of intricacies, that can be shed, in the the cold shoulder, or like, it's not going anywhere. It's because that oftentimes you are the material, you've done all the right things, but that person is not in that space, and they're somewhere off in the imaginary kingdom of fantasy land, maybe dreaming up their next situation or their next whatever. In other words, they're always sort of very futuristic, or just sort of can tap into these other very far distant things and sort of, but not in an inclusive way, which is the problem. It's competitive. It's like, well, this is my DNA, and well, your DNA, is not as, like, you don't have as many sharp edges as my DNA's, or my DNA has more diamonds in it, or whatever they're thinking about their awesomeness. I mean, as I say, when you meet a narcissist, they might as well not say pleased to meet you and shake your hands. They might as well say pleased to meet me, isn't it? Nice to meet me, isn't it? I mean, basically, they're just all about, like, sort of that feeding for attention. They have a much more desire. If you think of it like an appetite, they have what can be insatiable, which means it doesn't really ever feel enough to them. Which, the counter to that now is kind of like that topic of, like, minimalism, which I think a lot of millennials are getting into, and very interesting topics, of that, when, after sort of that big effort, it can feel like that's it. And then what then people oftentimes then, as a kind of a whiplash, an emotional whiplash, is they feel like they're sort of quitting. They go through, I give up. They go through, I'm giving up, and as if they've just been beat, and that's when you can kind of get that vibe that you've been in a relationship with someone who is trying to get the best out of you, but not to give the best of themselves. Basically, there's different levels from which people are coming from. Literally, like, from a reality, and like, and if they can't see and acknowledge and validate, like, and say it's okay where you're coming from, that if there's not something inherently flawed, basically they like to give everybody else the inferiority complex, and have very, very high expectations, as well maybe they should. So it's a lot of these things that then begin the foundation, or the uneven surface. I think you can tell you're in a relationship that it becomes on faulty ground when it feels like you're on uneven playing ground. They're always, just trying to, like, almost as if where they're standing, the sun shines a little bit more directly, or as if the air blows a little bit more their direction. That's not true. We all have access to the sun, air, wind, and water, and all the 24 hours of the day, and to basically become our own best authentic selves at that happiness level. Because some people they don't have to look anywhere for happiness. Some people have to go to the mall for 8 hours. I mean, so, and you don't have to be judged. See, with competition comes, oftentimes, a judgment, I would say. A competition, meaning they're trying to judge, and make a judgment call. It's in that arena of judgment, meaning I am assigning the law of the land. And if you're in someone who's laying the law of the land, you have just been colonized from your foot up. I mean, you've just been basically put into a box, and you might as well, I don't know, just go poof like Superman and exit out of that relationship, because you're being stuffed into just a box of stuff. I mean, basically, you're being objectified, and you're not, when that competition sort of gets in the way, again, a little bit can be good for a relationship. Why don't you get better with the computer? Why don't you get better with, this? Why don't you take more time off? Why don't you, so they're, couples are, it's kind of their role, help each other out. It's a team thing here, but the problem with, the narcissist is the judgment, and it's just basically, you don't have a chance. They don't give you a chance, but then they make you feel like you don't have a chance. In other words, like, as if their judgment is supposed to echo through your life and designate the meaning and direction of your life, and that is not true. You have to be willing then to stand on your own, and not need that banter, or just sort of see, what level of that you want to engage in, and to make sure that there isn't some sort of leftover pangs that draw you back. Because what happens in those relationships, I feel, is that a lot of those habits might either stay there or sort of be buried there, that kind of are used to being like you're in a relationship with a narcissist. When you're in a relationship, I feel that has a better foundation of trust, which means, like, I think that you're okay and that you're trustworthy. I think the ultimate message of a narcissist, narcissist is, you're not good enough. And they violate your trust through the things that they do. And in a psychopathic way, it's more like, you're so stupid I could fool you, and if you were an Eskimo, I could sell you snow. I mean, basically, in the winter is basically what they want to tie you up in a trap and say, look, how did you get yourself there? And just these strange games full of gaslighting and brainwashing, which are very difficult states to be in for some degree of time. And a lot of people unknowingly get cast into that sort of behavior. And I want to say that's a sycophantic, but there's a competition. And when it's with someone who's psychopathic, they've already got the game figured out. I mean, so if you feel that there was something about you, you should stop asking that question, because that question is a moot point. Okay, it's a mute. We don't even want to go there. Why didn't I notice? Why didn't I this? Why did I not know? Well, because it doesn't enter the vocabulary. It doesn't come because of their level of deception. I mean, they're salamander-like. They can change and metamorphosize themselves to fit into and blend into a lot of different situations that most people can't. I mean, they literally change their disposition, and oftentimes they can change, like, their tone and the language that they use, and learn up on things and pretend all sorts of stuff. So it gets into some very murky waters that, of course, how do you know how to navigate if you've never been there before? So, I mean, that's what it's, that's what we have to come together for. So, sycophantic behavior, behaving or done in an obsequious way in order to gain advantage. So they're behaving in a way so as to get an advantage over you. Well, I'm just sitting here twiddling my thumbs and singing Timbuktu, and you want to take advantage? I mean, it's just, obsequious, meaning, interesting word. Of course, we have to look that up just as we're on to it. Obedient or attentive to an excessive or servile degree. So, obsequious meaning, as if you're just supposed to be obedient or ingratiating to them, fawning them, but because it's like two of the same coin. It's like two head and the tails of the same coin. The sycophantic behavior, meaning when somebody is acting in ways to get an advantage over you, well, it's gonna bring out these new behaviors in you to protect yourself, and so oftentimes I would say one becomes attentive. One thinks one is falling in love. One thinks one's learning the way. One thinks one is becoming their perfect glove. Whatever you might have told yourself, you can throw it out the window or you can hold on to it. It's up to you. But, they sort of demand, it's very strange, they sort of demand of you what they don't want. They want people who can, oftentimes be people that they can lean on. So they want to be the one who's sort of gets to do all the playing and screwing around in the relationship while the other one does all the work, that won't work either. I do not think that's a happy combo. But when you're talking about really getting competitive, when someone's trying to play you for a fool, and you don't know it because you're blind in love, or you have so much time invested, or whatever it is, you truly value this person, there's no one else like them. This could very well be true, but it doesn't mean that you have to spend half of your life trying to figure them out. I don't think this should be the goal and purpose of your life, but you can learn about people, and so is to teach others, and so is to be protected, and so is not to be taken advantage of, or to identify when one is being taken advantage of. People who are being lured, swayed, people, there's a lot of this stuff that's going on. And so when you really break it down, that competition comes to, the seductive as well, the competitive nature in that aspect. And ultimately, and that can also become effective if you don't have that foundation of trust and desire for the best for the other, and to know that they have that for you. I think in a relationship with a narcissist or psychopathic, because of that competitive nature, they don't always want the best for you. They don't even, they make sure kind of the best is not there for you. I would say they even oftentimes guarantee it. But it's usually to satisfy their own dependency needs. They sort of create dependent people to satisfy their dependency needs. It becomes a really vicious cycle. One can be, again, allured. Oftentimes there's this allure of the game. Great, playing and having fun and being childlike is like one of the most healing things you can do. But not when it's like competitive to the point where someone is always being shown up, shown down, show who's who, shows what, and like as if you can't, you don't even have the right or the ability or to know. There's a lot of insinuating going on, but the problem is, I would think, ultimately in those type of relationship dynamics, they do not want the best for you. That is not good to welcome into your wellness, your emotional wellness. At some point, you have to decide, that you want the best for you, and you have to allow that, even though you might not know what it is after you've been through, you might be so conditioned to be in this sort of dynamic that you might find yourself allured to similar patterns, until you say, no, that's not a good match. Ruining my bank account, ruining my night, ruining my relationship, ruining my job, ruining my health, whatever it is that's taken a toll, because undoubtedly it'll take a lot out of you, as if you're like, it's too much of a struggle. A relationship should have some buoyancy. As I've brought this up before, but I always remember in college when an English professor, and believe me, those guys can read into a book, okay? And he pointed to me in the big class, and he's like, he wanted to talk to me, what do you think buoyancy means in this sentence? And I was just like, in this context, and I was just like, that it's a life-sustaining, that you would never be held down, and I didn't know what he meant, but I'm like, oh my gosh, did I answer that enough? Or, but buoyancy, and I always, and then he went on to sort of define it the way a professor would, but that always sort of hung on to me. And what does it mean to be buoyant, or to be a buoyant person? Especially if your desire ultimately is to be free of tension, or free of disease, and free of distress, and is to be, happy, and so anyway, not to keep going on this topic, but it does merit a lot of attention. And I just really hope that, when we talk about buoyancy or something, meaning, can you be out there just on your own and knowing that, that just that little vibration of just being, um, you know, is okay, and that gives you ultimately the best place to come from, or to be from, or love from, or think from, and to never kind of have known and to inhabit that strength within your body, I think is what, the competitor always tries to do, is sort of, leave you, sort of defeated, feeling defeated. And, that's not what love does. I don't think love, true, honest, clear relationship isn't about, it's about being open. It's not trying to pull a quick snag, a quick hook, a quick jaw, elbow to the jaw, or a quick snide comment. Those are like emotional daggers. Those, when you really think it, who would need that? Someone who's competitive, someone who, I guess they feel that emotional daggers are what they must use for their day. Well, who anybody else want to need emotional, it's just not something that, maybe one wants to be under. And so you can look at that, like that buoyancy, like the way that teacher, that sort of, since I never really answered that question, it kind of feels like an unanswered question. And to me, as I've kind of matured, I kind of think that more resonates now with happiness, which means it's just sort of being there. It's just sort of, and it can be neutral, but it's absent of the negative. It's absent of the fear, and, a buoyancy, and, and to kind of quest for what is your, regular, buoyant, bubbly state. What is your, what is your groove? It doesn't have to be better than, worse than, attractive to, trying to impress. But for you, what is your, and what is that kind of, and not just what you aspire to, but the real you, when you're not shortchanging yourself, and you're not driving yourself crazy. Like, what is that zone, and how can you discipline and be disciplined and accountable inside? I think it's that accountability, which there's so much indiscipline, I think, that goes on in a narcissist relationship. There's so many different threads to this. I mean, we could just go on, but, put your comments here in terms of what, and I'm trying to sort of, talk about, or espouse some topics that sort of go right to the heart of issues between either functional or unfunctional, dysfunctional relationships. They should be a little bit, so if you can kind of look at then what were the core problems, what broke the foundation, so I don't do that again, so I don't do that to my house again, so I can best protect now, and and to know now, and to know that what you have is precious, like, and to be disciplined in a way that was not validated. It's okay. You being strong is going to feel different than the weak person that, the competitor was trying to beat you down for. You don't, and you can find, maybe you've got something that you really feel then unfulfilled. Well, oftentimes that's just living your life as a person, and being allowed that very, very state to explore, to discover, to uncover for yourself, to feel safe, to have food and not a food disorder, to have enough sleep and not a sleep disorder, to have relationships and not a lot of relationship disorders. To what degree, can you find an exit out of that chaos, and to come out, a little bit more in alignment, and just saying, hey, I'm not playing that game. I'm not stepping into the emotional boxing ring. I'm not going there. I'm not taking the invite. I'm not tempted. I'm not jealous of anyone who cares to go ahead, and just let it be. And therefore you can behold, sort of personal power and get closer to more of the miraculous and see things, that are neat to you, that catch your attention, and it can be something simple, but it's usually the simple things that are overlooked, not good enough, are junk, garbage, not worth looking at. Why would you want to see this garden? Why would you want to see these wild animals? Why would you want to protect this forest? Why do you think that garden is something you want? There's a lot of ways that you really need to understand that sometimes that life is about healing, but it's also about living in a healthy mix. This is your buddy, Peace and Harmony, with you here today, and I hope that these videos do help. Please share, please subscribe, and for goodness sake, please donate for more great tools, videos, discussion, and support. Peace out, and have a beautiful day.